Hello and welcome to the two-man power trip of wrestling. Your host, JP John Poz. With me today, a very special guest, the protege of the legendary Lou Thesz, former Jim Crockett Promotions, New Japan, UWF-i wrestler, Mr. Mark Fleming. Mark, welcome in. How you doing?
Hey, how you doing, John? Thanks for inviting me here.
No problem. What's going on in your world? What are you up to?
Well, I'm just I'm working for a school system here as a security, and that's just about it. I'm not doing any wrestling. I retired back in 2006. Got a lot of injuries, and I need both my knees replaced, and I've had back surgery, so the wrestling's out for now, and I don't think I'll ever be able to do it.
Right.
But I'm just living life, you know.
Any signings or conventions, anything of that nature or that sort?
Yes, I do have a big signing coming up. The Virginia Championship Wrestling is having a big show here in Portsmouth, and they invited me to do a signing and all that there, which they do regularly. I go there to the matches and sign autographs. And I've done some sport card shows, and I sell my book and sell pictures and all that stuff. So I've been doing that. Mm-hmm.
Tell us about the books. I know Scott Teal, obviously a world-renowned great author. He wrote the book.
Well, I wrote the book actually.
He published it. Yeah.
Yeah, he published it. It's called It's Wrestling, Not Wrestling. And it's got two printings. This is the first one, then this is the second one, and you can get it directly through me if you email me or contact me on Facebook, which is how I sell a lot of them, and or you could go to Crowbar Press, which is Scott Teal's website, to get all his wrestling books, and it's done real well. It came out in 2016, and like I say, it's on its second printing now, and it's done pretty good. And I've sold a lot of them through the myself through the internet, and I sell a lot of them at the shows I go to, and it's gotten pretty good reviews. I'm real happy with it. I just tell my story of how I got started through the amateurs, and of course working for Crockett, going out to the tryouts there, and then finally meeting Lou Thesz and him taking me on, and that really got my career going, and I go from there all the way up to when I owned the gym. I had a gym for 16 years, and I talk about that. And it actually tells you everything I've ever done in wrestling, amateur or pro.
When you get into the business, were you like a fan originally before you got in? Like how do you make the leap, or how'd you get in?
Well, I didn't even start watching wrestling until I was about 12 years old. And then once I saw it, I fell in love with it on TV. But I wanted to get involved in the sport so bad before then through school. Of course, I was too young. So when I became 13, I joined. I was introduced to the high school wrestling coach. And at 13 years old, I was too young to go out for the junior varsity. You had to be 14. I was in 7th grade. You had to be in 8th grade. But I was so big for my size, and I had already started lifting weights. And I was a pretty good sized kid for my age. And heck, he thought I was in high school. He said, well, come on out just between me and you and start working out with the high school boys. So that's what I did. Every day after school, I would go up to the high school and work out with the boys there in the wrestling room. And the next year, I made the varsity team and went from there. And I went all the way up to varsity and wrestled all the way through school. But I did not go to college. I wanted to turn pro, but that was a kayfabe business back then, and they didn't have schools and all around like they do now. But I was fortunate enough to become friends with Ricky Steamboat by going to the matches here locally at the Scope Coliseum, and him and I just struck up conversations about me wrestling amateur. That's what we would talk about, me wrestling my amateur matches, the tournaments I would wrestle in. And he was more interested in that, listening about that. And, every time they would come to town, I would go down there and talk to him. And he would always show a lot of interest in my wrestling amateur career. And I told him one day, I says, I would like to do this. And he was like, well, which I knew was a whole different ball game just watching it, But he says, this is mighty hard to get into. He says, it's not an easy business. And I was aware of that. It was like a kid wanting to play Major League Baseball, And I kept telling him, he knew I was serious about it. I wasn't your average fan as far as the angles, or I was looking at the matches to study them. That might sound a little odd, but at that young age, a high school kid, I was watching the matches and see how these guys did the holds and how they fell and all that, and it just intrigued me, and I just wanted to do it. And I guess he noticed that. So he says, what I'm going to tell you to do is go, he said, give me your resume of all the tournaments you won and every athletic thing you've done. I played football, I wrestled, I played rugby. He says, write all that down and give me a good shot of you in your wrestling amateur gear, and I'll send it to Crockett. He said, once a year, Jim Crockett has a tryout camp looking for new talent. He says, now, in the last few years, nobody's ever made it. Actually, the one before me who made it was Don Kernodle. And that was a good probably 8-10 years before me. I'm not sure, but it was a long time. He was the last one that made the tryouts before me. And he said, so don't be disappointed if you don't make it. He says, I will guarantee you it'd be the hardest thing you ever went through. And he says, and the Anderson brothers are in charge of it. And he says, I don't know if you know them, but they are a-holes, and they are rough and tough and don't take no mess. Of course, I was familiar with them from watching them, And I said, well, hey, I want to give it a try. So it took really close to a year after I gave him my resume. And then Joe Murnick, who worked for Crockett, sent me a letter telling me, he looked at my resume and he told me, he says, with your resume, I could probably get you a partial scholarship to University of North Carolina, because he was really good friends with the wrestling coach there. And he says, I would go that route instead of trying to become a pro. And he tried to discourage me and he said he'd rather for me to get an education, and then after I wrestled college, go into the pros if I would like. I wasn't interested. I said, I appreciate your offer, sir, but I really want to try this. I wasn't interested in going to college. I wanted to do this. And he was like, okay. So he, oh gosh, like I said, it was almost a year later. They called me and said that there's going to be a tryout on such and such date at the Charlotte Coliseum. Either I show up or not, whatever. They told me everything to do. So I was 19 at the time. Yeah, 18. I was 18 at the time. So my dad and My mother rode with us. We rode down. It's a 330-mile trip from here to Charlotte. This was supposed to be a one-day, all-day affair workout. So I get there, and me and my dad walk in the Coliseum, and I was like, they weighed us all in, and I think I was the second smallest guy there. It was 20-some guys, and I think he said 27, Gene Anderson said. And I was the second smallest. I weighed 200. And this guy there that weighed 190, and the rest of them were light. They had a lot of South Carolina college football players from the Gamecocks. University of South Carolina. There's about 4 of those guys there. I know there was some bodybuilders there. There were some amateur college wrestlers there. I mean, they were all walks of life athletes there trying to try out for this thing. And Steamboat had warned me. He says, let me tell you, get in the best shape you can be. Well, after I graduated from high school, I was still going up to the wrestling room at Northview High and practicing with the guys and helping my coach guys and all. So I was in shape, and I did my road work and I lifted weights and all. But I was only 200 pounds, and I was in shape. And the first thing we did, we had to do 500 Hindu squats without stopping. Of course, if you couldn't do any exercise that the Anderson brothers told you to do, they didn't mess with you. They didn't give you a second chance. They told you to get out. So we had to run around the Coliseum in a certain amount of time. Gene Anderson timed us. We had to run around the whole Coliseum a certain amount of time. And then we had to go in there and do 500 Hindu squats nonstop and 100 push-ups nonstop. Well, after that, I would say a third of them left. Couldn't even do it. They quit. So after that, we would grab partners and take turns of throwing each guy on our shoulders, and we'd have to run up the Coliseum steps up to the top and down, and then switch over and then get on the guy's shoulder. He'd do the same thing. And that eliminated a lot of guys. And then, it wasn't no breaks in between all this. There wasn't any take a 10-minute break or whatever. No, Ole Anderson, he was running the exercises, and it was boom, boom, boom. And then after we did that, the guys that were left, we were instructed to go to the ring. It was set up for the matches that night. They were going to wrestle there that night. And we had a round-robin tournament. Like Willie Anderson would pick a guy and say, you get in the ring. And you get in the ring, and then he would say, okay, you get in there. All right, and Gene would time him. You would wrestle a certain amount of time and try to pin the guy. So that's what we did. And if you got pinned, you were out. You were eliminated. You were done. You got kicked out. And it became my turn. I got in there, and if you won or you pin a guy, you stayed in the ring. If you got pinned, you were gone. So then you feed that. So when I got in there, I pinned everybody I wrestled. And Ole Anderson, he kind of liked that. He got in the ring. He says, I can tell you wrestle, kid, and all this and all. He said, but you know what? I don't know how tough you are. So I was a little intimidated, I was fired up, but I was intimidated by him. And
right.
He said, get in referee's position. So I get in referee's position. He gets on top of me. Gene Anderson says, wrestle. Excuse me. And we wrestled, and we were wrestling around the mat. And I switched him. I switched Ole and got behind him. And that pissed him off. And he started cussing at me and elbowing me and everything like that. And finally he got on top of me. He was choking me with his forearm across my neck. He said, you think you're tough, don't you, kid? You think you're... And just my adrenaline was going, and I fought him back. He was trying to make me give up. He was cross-facing me and doing everything he could to make me give up. I kept fighting him. So finally Gene says, time, that's good. I said, I just thought, they're going to get rid of me. And then he at the very end, he picked a big guy from Sumter, South Carolina, a bodybuilder from Winston-Salem, North Carolina, and me. We were the three finalists. And then he sent us home. He says, okay, guys, he said, first of all, he told me, he says, I want you, when you come back and start training, I want you to weigh at least 220, because I was at 200 pounds. He says, 220 is what you got to weigh. And then he told each guy what he's got to do to prepare himself for the next workout. Anyway, it was a few months. I got to call back. I had to go. My car couldn't make it there, so I had to get on the Greyhound bus and to Charlotte to go back and train. Well, I was there about a week, I guess, training. And the other two guys, the bodybuilder was the first one to quit because the workouts were unbelievable. We would go to our hotel rooms at night and just bruised from head to toe and wore slam out because we would go there and work out. And it wasn't no 2-hour workout. It was like 4 or 5 hour workout. Just throwing each other around, running the ropes, Hindu squats, wrestling on the mat. Had to wrestle around with Gene Anderson. And it was tough when the guy from North Carolina quit. He didn't come back. And then it was just me and the guy from Sumter. And he was a big guy. Oh, he weighed like 275. He was a bouncer for some bar down there. He was a big guy. And dumb as a rock. And he didn't know how to wrestle. He was just big and strong. He was strong. But he couldn't beat me. I mean, every time him and I would wrestle on the mat, he was just like a fish out of water. I could pin him anytime I wanted. And I didn't weigh 200 pounds. I weighed at that time 220 because I had to get up to 220. And anyway, finally we worked out together about 5 or 6 different times, going back and forth down there. And Gene told the guy, he says, look, you just don't have what it takes. Told the big guy that. He said, you're not talented enough or something. Anyway, he left, and then it was just me. I was on the left, and I was like, so Gene, threw me around, worked me over. And he told me, he says, go home, keep staying in shape, keep training like you're doing. He says, I'm going to call you and throw you on the road. I told him, I says, well, you think I'm ready? He says, you're going to get ready by traveling on the road, and you're going to learn doing it. And actually getting in the ring with these guys and doing it. That's how you're going to learn. Well, I didn't think I was ready. But he started booking me. And I traveled all over the Mid-Atlantic area doing TVs, doing squash jobs on TVs and all that. But it was tough. I'm not going to sit here and lie to you. It's run through my mind a few times that I was ready to quit because the traveling is rough. And here I was getting beat up daily by these guys that were very experienced. And they looked at me as new meat,
Yep.
They didn't know where I was going or what's going to happen. So they were like, he's not going to take my spot, get booked ahead of me. So I'm going to try to make him look bad and hurt him. That's the way the business was then. And this is only in 1982. And it was still a lot of the old timers around then. And these guys would, in these matches would try to hurt you. The fans didn't know what was going on, but they would really put a hook on you and try to hurt you. And but I stuck it out. I traveled around with these guys. I learned to keep my mouth shut, just sit back and listen, and don't talk unless you're talked to. And I had to go through the initiation part. That's all that was just playing with my head to see how tough I was mentally and physically. That's what they were doing. And I went through the Carolinas doing that. And until I met Lou, I had some ups and downs with the Crockett deal, but I wasn't really the type of guy they were looking for because I wasn't interested in steroids. At the time, I was weighing about 230, and I was going full time with them. And they booked me in matches for the NWA Junior Heavyweight Championship, and they promised it to me, actually.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Dusty Rhodes himself in Crockett's conference room promised me, because he sent me to Kansas City, Bob Goggles territory. He says, we're going to put the title on you. This was in 86. And never happened. And it wasn't because of my work. It was a lot of politics involved, which I was learning all this at the time. But then the Lord introduced me to Lou Thesz, and he saw me wrestle one night at the Scope here, Coliseum, and because he was living in Norfolk, which I didn't know at the time. You know, I knew who Lou Thesz was. Everybody knew who Lou Thesz was.
Yep.
But I'd never met him. I never thought I would meet him. He was, he was the world's best. But if I'm talking too much, just let me know. I get
no, not at all. No, not at all. But yet, obviously, Thesz, known as being, the champ, you know what I mean? The NWA World Champion. Like, he's synonymous with the belt.
Yeah, he was, I was wrestling on one of the matches on the card at the Scope Coliseum, and he was there, which I had no idea he was there. He was in the audience. And after my match, and after a couple other matches, I think it was an admission, he came back in the back. And, of course, he knew all the top boys, like Wahoo McDaniel, Flair, and I don't know all who else was there. But he was coming down there to speak to them, So he came in the locker room, and here I was, lacing my boots, and I saw him come in. I said, to myself, I said, that's Lou Thesz. So I didn't really pay attention because I was just a green guy, So he walked around the room, and he talked to Wahoo McDaniel for a long time because they were good friends, and he'd go around and shake all the boys' hands in the locker room and all that. And he came to me, and he shook my hand. He said, "How you doing, kid?" And I'm Lou Thesz. I said, "Yes, sir." I was very polite to him and told him that I know who he is, and I really admired him, and I just showed him a lot of respect. And he says, "You've wrestled a little bit, haven't you?" I said, "Well, I wrestled in school." I says, "But I've really studied wrestling for a long time, and I just love the sport, and I just did the best I could do." I didn't know what to say to him.
Right.
And he says, he said, "You're from here, right?" I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "Well, I'm living here now." And he says, "You don't see many people that can wrestle anymore." He says, "Whenever you're in town," he says, "why don't we get together and we can go to the gym together, and I can show you a few things." I was like, "Yeah?" I was shocked. I said, "Yes, sir. I'm sure it will." Well, when he left and went on, Wahoo McDaniel told me, because Wahoo McDaniel and I were pretty good friends. He used to travel with me, and I would ride with him, and so he would always talk to me. Wahoo told me, he says, "Damn, kid," he says, "you know who that is, right?" I said, "Yeah, I know who that is." He says, "You better take him up on that." He said, "Because let me tell you something about Lou Thesz. He doesn't tell people that a lot. Unless you're a wrestler, he won't give you the time of day." He said, "So I advise you to take him up on that offer." I said, "Well, I will." So, but I was booked. I was going from Charlotte to Savannah, Georgia, all over South Carolina, North Carolina, West Virginia, Tennessee. I mean, we were all over the place. And so I finally had a break. I say probably a good 6 months, 4 to 6 months after that. I was home for a few days, and I told my dad, I says, I don't know if I should call him, or because he's not going to remember me. Yeah, so, just try it. So I called him and I told him who it was. He says, sure, I remember you. He says, when can you come over to my house? And he loved crabs. He lived right there on the Chesapeake Bay, right on the beach. He said, I got a bunch of crabs here. I want you to come over and eat crabs with me. So I went over there and we talked about the business. And he drilled me. He asked me about all my amateur stuff. And I could tell he was testing me about different things, different questions, he asked me did I smoke. He asked me how much I work out and what do I do in my workouts and all this, blah, blah, blah. And I was telling him, and he said, well, he says, why don't we go to, it was a place called Waring's Gym down in Virginia Beach. They got a ring down there, or they got wrestling mats too. He said, we can get in there and I can show you a few stuff. He said, because I like how you carry yourself in the ring and how you were working. He said, I could tell the way you were doing your stuff. You knew how to wrestle, but you just need you need to be taught a little better. So I took him up on it. We go down there and we worked out. And here I go on the road again. Didn't see him for a couple of weeks. Every time I'd come back, I'd make it a point to go to him. He would go to the gym. And then he would say, he'd ask me, he'd say, can I ride with you to a couple of shows, and he would ride with me and he'd sit there and watch me. And I think I was wrestling Sting. I was wrestling Sting at the Darton Arena in Raleigh. And he was there. He says, at the match, he says, you have forgotten more than that guy. No, and you had to put him over. Because he could tell that I would, put him over.
Yep.
And he says, on the way home, he says, I'm not trying to tell you what to do. He said, but you're not what they want here. You're not the type. I didn't know what he meant by that. He says, work out with me and stick with me, and I want to show you some stuff. And that's what I did. And then in the meantime, Dusty had come in and took over the booking job for Crockett. Dory Funk was the booker when I first started and was there at this time, and then he left and Dusty came in. And Dusty didn't know how to wrestle his way up a wet paper bag and doesn't even know, I don't even think he knows how to spell the word, but he didn't like guys that could really wrestle unless they did what they do or a gimmick, But he brought all his Florida boys in with him and the underneath guys that were working for Crockett. He didn't book us as often. And so my booking started getting less and less and less. So I started working out. That gave me time to work out with Lou more and more and more. And we just went from there. And I just started working out with him. He finally told me, he says, you need to get away from those people. And I was like, that's the biggest organization in the business. And I says, I got at least my foot in the door with them. I says, I don't know where to go or what to do. I don't know, because the territory days were kind of going away, because Vince was buying everything up.
Definitely. And
I didn't want to leave Crockett because Crockett was the shit then, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
This is before WWF was really getting big. And I didn't know what to do. I said, I don't know. And I had a lot of what we called outlaw guys. That's what they called them then. They were independent promoters popping up everywhere because the territories were leaving. So they were calling me to work. And if Crockett ever caught you working with an outlaw group back then, you were automatically fired. So I told Lou, I said, I got a lot of independent promoters calling me, but I don't want to work for them because if they find out, they're going to fire me because I would get. The reason is, just say, for an example, if I was working at the Greensboro Coliseum, heck, I could make $500-600 one night at Greensboro. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Booked at the Greensboro Coliseum or something. So that was good money. And that was just for one match. And and I didn't want to lose all that. Lou says, you got to get away from them because they're not going to do nothing with you. You're not what they're looking for. You're not a gimmick guy. And that's what they want. They want muscle heads. They want gimmick guys. And especially since Dusty's in charge, because he's a gimmick guy, that's all he wants. You're not in the clique with him. He says, I'm telling you, you need to get away from that group. So he says, I can handle the independent part. He says, this is what you do. He says, if you want to double dip, work for Crockett, work for independents, and make some money on the side during the weekends. He says, put on a hood. And I was surprised he said that because I looked at that as a gimmick, and I didn't want no gimmick. And he says, look, that's a mask is nothing to be ashamed of. He says, many wrestlers wore masks that were good athletes. He said, so wear a mask, call yourself the Phantom, and go work for these independents, work out with me, and double dip with Crockett. And I did that for almost, about a year. About a year. And they never knew. I mean, I don't know if they care or not, but I know they were really strict about that, so I don't think they ever knew I was doing that. And then finally, Dusty called me up for some booking, and I told him, I said, I don't want to be booked by you guys no more. I says, I'm over it. I'm done with it, y'all. And that was the end of that. So I just continued really every day, working out with Lou every day. And just doing the independence things. He says, I got a place you can go to appreciate somebody with your talent. He says, you would fit right in. He said, that's New Japan. So he sent me over there for a 4 or 5 week tour. And for Noki's group. And I went over there and did pretty good, but I was still wrestling more. And so then there was this group called the UWF. Well, while I was working for New Japan, they have these magazines over there, Japanese wrestling magazines all over the place. And they did a 2-page article on me saying that, I forgot the title, Mark Fleming, a suitable wrestler for the UWF, because I did a lot of mat wrestling and showed a lot of wrestling holds in my matches. And Lou said, well, there you go. So the guy that started that, Maeda, he had left and gone with his Holland group. I forgot what they called his group, but they had somebody else running the UWF, and they called Lou because they announced me in Japan as the Lou Thesz Protege when I was with New Japan. So UWF called Lou Thesz and asked them how they could get in touch with me. And they wanted to come scout me because New Japan came and scouted me too. I forgot that part, but a guy named Tokyo Joe Daigo was from Calgary, Canada. He was the scout for New Japan. He came and scouted me and liked what he saw. And that's how I got booked in New Japan. But UWF sent a scout also. Shinji, I can't think of his last name. He lived in Tennessee. He was one of the scouts. And Anjo, who was one of the wrestlers over there with you, he came here. And at the time, me and Lou were working out at a boxing gym because our other gym had flooded. So Lou knew this old boxer that had a gym in town, and he let us use the ring. And that's where we were training. So they come down there and watch me wrestle. And Lou told me, they said right away, when can we have him? And Lou said, he's available anytime. He has no ties with nobody. And that was in January, and I was booked for UWF in February that year. And this was in 92. And so I go over there. I ended up going to Japan on 19 tours. Lou accompanied me a lot of them, not all of them. He didn't go to all of them, but yeah, I mean, I went over there and I did okay with. I was doing their type of wrestling that they wanted. I fitted in, except they were doing kicking. I told Lou, I said, "There's no kicking in wrestling." He says, "I agree." He said, "But let's honor their style." Because let me tell you something, they were paying me very well. Very well. And he said, let's honor them and use their style. Let's just learn their style and do it their way. That's what I did. Magazines ranked me number 2 behind Gary Albright in their rankings for 6 months in the magazines. So I guess the fans were liking what they saw. But that's how it went. But Lou really, he took me under his wings. Why, I don't know. Never asked him. But he was he was interested in me. And I don't know why, because I wasn't a Olympic gold medalist or nothing. But he told me one time, he says, you remind me of myself when I was a kid starting a business. He said, because you're hungry. He says, I can tell you're willing to learn. You're not a know-it-all. You're not here to party and mess with the arena rats. You're here to do the business and do it right. And that's the way Lou was. He wasn't, he took the business serious. And a lot of the guys, that's all they could think about is go out and get drunk, go chase rats. And you know what I'm saying? He knew I wasn't that type of person, that I was doing it for the love of the game. And, and I worked hard. I worked hard because nothing came easy. I worked hard in the gym and on the mat. And he would get Japanese guys to come over. And we would train them. And in return, I was getting trained. You see what I'm saying? Because we had Masa Chono come over, and I got to work out with him a lot. He became world champion, WWE world champion. He beat Arn Anderson in that tournament over there. He was a big star for New Japan. But he trained with us, and we also had the youngest grand champion sumo guy, Koji Katao, come over there, and Lou, I worked out with him 7 days a week for 3 months solid, and that was tough because he was like, I think he weighed like 375 when he got there. He was like 6'7". Here I was like 240, 5'11", and the guy couldn't wrestle on the mat. But getting him off his feet was like trying to tackle a house. He had legs, big legs, and sumos, he got balance. We were shooting. In these workouts, we were shooting. We weren't working and doing spots and all. I mean, Lou didn't do that. That's not the way you worked out with him. You went and shot, and we were shooting, and we'd go run down to his house on the beach and go to the gym every morning and work out together, and then go to the mat and stay till 9, 10 o'clock at night. And it was an all-day thing. That's all we did. And he finally got booked. He got booked was some company over there. But he was, what I understand, he left sumo with a bad taste in everybody's mouth because he was a hothead. But like I said, I worked out with him 7 days a week for 3 months, and I never saw him lose a temper with me, or with Lou. He showed us the ultimate respect after every workout, and he had a wrestler who came with him, Paulo. I forgot his name. Who worked for Baba. We could out wrestle that guy like he wanted nothing. But it was tough. And that helped me so much because him and I would just go at it. And Lou told me, he said, go at it and give him everything you got. I don't care. Just be rough and tough on him. And I'd cross face him, I'd bust his nose, and he would do the same to me and gave me a cauliflower ear. And we went tooth and nail every day. And Lou would sit there ringside, or he'd stand there ringside and just yell out different things for us to do, different holds, try this. And the guy, he was pretty solid. But it helped me better more than it helped him. I was benefiting the heck out of it. And I was loving it because I was learning so much from Lou at the time. And then Lou would show me holds and get me, and he would never demonstrate on nobody else but me. He would demonstrate the holds on me, and then I would walk through it with the training partner, and then he would torque it, and walk me through it with somebody else. But he would never demonstrate on anybody but me. I don't know. His wife told me, he says, his wife's name is Charlie, and I would go to their house every day, constantly. I would eat over there. Him and I would sit there and eat chocolate chip cookies and drink beer. And we would sit there on his deck and at the beach. And after we trained and all that, and then he would cook out on Sundays, and I'd go there and eat with him on Sunday. And his wife told me one day, she says, you brought Lou back to life. He said he had been out of the business for a long time. He had just had his hip replaced. And she says that you what do you call it? I guess reignited the full flair for the business for him because he found somebody that thought the way he did about the business and wanted to handle the business the way he did and not bleach my hair and be a goofball and be a clown. And I don't know. That's just the way it was. Before he died, he told me he was living in Florida. He moved. He left here and moved to Florida. And he called me one time and told me, he said, I just want to call and talk to you. He said, ain't nobody around here knows anything about wrestling. Can't talk wrestling. He said, so we would talk bullcrap on the phone and all that. And then he told me one time, he says, let me tell you something. He says, I'm giving you permission to use my name in any way because he says, I know you will do it right. And he says, I know you want to use and abuse it and do it wrong. And I said, I appreciate that, And I just thanked him for what he's done for me. And then never heard back from him. Last thing I heard, he passed. And actually, I saw it on the daggone internet. He had passed, and I liked the flip. And then his wife called me that same day. And so the last time I saw him in person was he asked me to sit with him at the Wrestling Hall of Fame in Newton, Iowa. That's when it was in Newton, Iowa. Mike Chapman had it, and we had a big banquet there, induction banquet. And a guy named Ted Lewin, who was Mark Lewin's brother. You ever heard of Mark Lewin?
Oh, yeah, Maniac Mark Lewin. Oh, yeah, the Purple Haze, everything, yeah. Yep.
I worked with him, too. But, his brother, Ted Lewin, was a wrestler. He became an artist. You ever heard of him?
No, I didn't even know he had a brother.
Oh, he's got two brothers. He had Don Lewin and Ted Lewin. They were both wrestlers. Anyway, Ted Lewin asked me to sit with him at this banquet. And I said, well, I appreciate it. I said, but Lou Thesz asked me to sit with him.
Yeah, it can. Yeah.
So I sat with Lou and his wife. And that's the last time I saw him live at that. I talked to him on the phone, but that was the last time I saw him alive. And then he passed. And then I went to his, they had a big, not a service, but a celebration, I guess, at the Hall of Fame. And I went to that. Saw a lot of the guys on it. He really made my career. I mean, was I Hulk Hogan or Ric Flair? No. But I got more satisfaction. He said, you know what, kid? He said, you can lay your head down on a pillow at night knowing that you're a wrestler. And that meant the world to me. When he told me that I was a wrestler, that put me on cloud nine, because that's what I wanted to be. That's what I trained hard to be. And that made me more than making $1 million in the business. That might sound stupid, but that's just the way I'm thinking. And I owe everything to him as far as what I've done. And he gave me the opportunity. So,
pretty great though to like have that on the resume. Like, oh, I'm honored by Thesz, but also I'm his protege. Obviously in the pantheon of the NWA and just the champions and just wrestling in general, he's up there. He's up near the Mount, just of like the legendary figures of the past.
Yeah, and another thing he did, he sponsored a wrestling tournament here in Norfolk. The proceeds went to the sailors at the Norfolk Naval Base. They got a big naval base here, a lot of military in this area. And he got the Norfolk Sports Club involved. And they sponsored he called the International Tournament. And he wanted to put his original belt up. And I was like, wow, that's pretty cool. And he said, he says, I was going to book some big name guys. He got Blackjack Mulligan booked. And I don't know if it was Terry Funk or Dory Funk, one of the Funks, but they canceled out. Anyway, I ended up taking it. I got the title at the end of this tournament, and so they awarded me the belt. We had the belt and the pictures taken in the ring and all that. And Lou was the referee for the me and Blackjack Mulligan were in the main event, and he put me over. Blackjack, with the suplex. We did a lot of wrestling, what we could with that big guy. But I got the title, and I told Lou, I said, this is an honor. I says, so after the matches, I gave it back to him, because he had it under lock and key in his house, in his suitcase. He said, oh, no. He says, this is yours. He says, every show you go to, wear it. I was like, well, I'll wear it when you come with me. He said, no. You got over. It's yours. You wear it, and you wear it everywhere you go. Everywhere you book, you wear it, and you tell them you be booked as the international heavyweight champion. And you're wearing the original belt that came all the way down from Ray Steele, and Sam Munch presented Ray Steele in St. Louis years ago. He says, you wear this belt everywhere you go, promote yourself as the international champion. He says, I'll go with you when I can. And that's what we did. So I was going around. I even worked for George Scott, and George Scott booked me with the NAWA. Him and Paul Jones and Johnny Weaver had a promotion. And so they promoted me as the international champion on TV and all that. So when I got booked for UWF, we said on one condition, you gotta advertise and promote you as the international heavyweight champion. And they said, well, UWF does not have a championship belt. We're not there yet. We don't want to present any belts there yet. So it became a they were like, and I was afraid to they weren't gonna book me because of that. And they guaranteed me a lot of money. I'd signed a good contract. It was good money. To me, it was good money. So
right.
I didn't want to give it up. So I said, well, I mean, I told Lou, I said, it's up to you. You're my man. You tell me what I got to do, what I should do. He says, oh, they're going to introduce you as the international champion. You're going to be the international champion. But they told Lou, nah, we get with that. But I told Lou, I said, look, let me just go over there. Excuse me. So they said, we might do that later, but not now. So I gave it up then. So
yeah,
I had to give it up, which I had held it for 2 years. So I went around circuits for 2 years with the belt.
It's pretty cool, though. Pretty awesome.
Yeah, 2 years. And I mean, he didn't see it until he was at the arenas with me. So it wasn't like I kept giving it back forth to him. It was in my possession for 2 years.
Yes. Yep.
And he trusted me with it because he knew that I was serious about it. He knew that I took it to heart. And he thought I represented it well, I guess. But anyway, that's all in my book. I got all these stories right here in my book. Everything I'm telling you is in there. But yeah, I owe so much to him. He taught me so much, not just about wrestling, but how to handle promoters, how to talk to promoters, because, I wasn't a smart ass guy, and he wanted me to be able to talk and tell these people what I wanted, because that's the way Lou was. Lou would go and tell you, and if you didn't like it, he wasn't gonna do it. You wanted to do it his way or no way. That's just the way he was. And yeah, did he burn bridges? Yes, he did. But he figured that, if he burnt the bridge, they weren't worth having anyway.
Right. Yeah.
He was, he wasn't the easiest person to get along with, because I found out that a lot of guys try to get trained by him and all that. And he was like, he would come up to me in the gym and whisper to me, he said, well, stretch this guy. He's just a big football player, a big power lifter. He ain't no wrestler. Just go out there and just stretch him and discourage him. And that's what I would have to do. And I'm telling you right now, that's the only way I can describe it, is he was the type that if he didn't think you had it, he wouldn't waste his time with you. He was just that way. He was very polite about it. He wasn't rough about it like the Andersons were. But he would sit me on him, and then he was just like, you don't have what it takes. Actually, what he would do, one of his old tricks, we worked out in this gym that was a hardcore gym. There was a lot of bodybuilders, powerlifters, and all that. And we worked out differently than them guys did. We would do different exercises, but we were working out for wrestling. And we did a lot of neck bridges, and I did a lot of stuff in my neck. And we were looking for guys to come down to our ring, which is about half a mile down the street, to come to our ring and have guys to give me a workout, And he would get these guys, these bodybuilders, these all big, strong guys. He'd say, hey, he says, you look like you could be the next Hulk Hogan. He says, why don't you come down to the ring today and you can work out with Mark here and see if you can be the next Hulk Hogan, And that's how he would bait him. I'm telling you right now, I'd say 90% of the times the guys would never show up. And the ones that would show up, he would tell me, he would say, just stretch them. And then if they showed any promise, then we would spend some time with them. But it wasn't nobody really that showed any promise for his satisfaction.
For him, yeah. Yep.
Not me, but for him.
Yep.
Because I wasn't the one to say so. It was him. And, that was how our relationship went. And had him and I, we've had our differences and we've had our arguments. And we had a big blowout one time where I just told him to heck with it. But we'd always mend our fences and get back together and do our thing. And that's just the way it was. But I was with him for 8 years. Actively about 8 years. He was handling my stuff, and we always had an agreement that he did all my negotiating for me. He would set everything up, and I trusted him, and he never did me wrong. Always knew up front. The only time we had a problem is when he had me booked in Australia for a whole summer, 3 months. I was booked in Australia with the international belt. I was booked as that. And I was going to also work under the hood for some matches as the Phantom. So we had everything. Yeah, I was double dipping, but it was for the same promoter. What we were going to do, we were going to wrestle at a carnival in Australia, out of Sydney, but it was not a carnival, but it was like a Busch Gardens type thing. I don't remember what it was called, but it was something that kind of set up, and we would have 2 shows a day. And I was excited. I was going to be there all summer, and I was all excited and everything. And so he told me, he says, get your, back then it was VHS videotapes. All my stuff was on. He said, give me your tapes and give me a bunch of pictures and all that and all your wrestling stuff. And we'll send them over there to the promoter. So we did that. And so the promoter called Lou one time and went back on his word about the payoff. I was supposed to get paid an X amount of dollars for the 3 months, and Lou was supposed to get a booking fee from me, which was understandable. He should.
Right.
And the promoter was going to take some percentage out for something that didn't make sense and not pay. It didn't equal out. The money didn't equal out what we guaranteed. And Lou says, no, we're not doing it. You either going to do it what you promised and we're going to sign the contract, or we ain't doing it at all. But the guy hummed and hawed. And we told him, he said, forget it. And I was like, I was so upset because I wanted to go to Australia. And I had sent all my stuff over there. I had videotapes of everything I've ever done. He had videotaped me working out. A lot of good stuff, a lot of good film there on me and all this stuff and interviews and all that. And he says, oh, don't worry, you'll get it back when you get over there. I was like, oh, okay.
Right.
Never got it back. He had a falling out with her. I never got the stuff back and didn't go to Australia. And I was really PO'd about that. But, what are you going to do? That was before I went to the UWF. That was right after the first trip to Japan. I was supposed to go over there. And, but that's the way he was. That's what I'm trying to tell you. He was, he stuck to his word. He was tough with these promoters, man. He told me, he says, never take a check from any promoter. He said, I don't care. You want cash. And that's the way the Japanese paid me. And that's the way he wanted Australia to pay me. And
Smart.
I paid, except Crockett. Now, Crockett paid with check. And Crockett was well established. I never had no problems with their payoffs. Actually, Crockett paid me very well, really. They just didn't, we didn't think they handled my talent very well. And I agree, but I was just afraid to make a move to get away from him because he was the hottest thing going. And but when I did wrestle for him, I got paid very well. And there was a guy there named Sandy Scott. I don't know if you ever heard of him. He was an ex-wrestler.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
George's brother.
Scott's brother, yeah. Yep.
George's brother. But he was very good to me, and he would book me. And I'll tell you who else booked me very well when he was booker there. Dory Funk Jr. Dory Funk Jr. took care of me. So did Wahoo when he was booker. He liked my style, and so did, I know you know him, Ernie Ladd.
Oh, yeah. Big cat, yeah.
Yep, he booked me very well. But when Ernie Ladd and Dory and Wahoo left, they went to Florida, wherever. And Dusty came in. Crockett went to shit. Yeah, I mean, to me, Dusty ruins business. He sucked, I thought. I never respected him. Guys used to tell me in the locker room, he'd walk around the locker room naked and telling jokes and all these stupid jokes and all. And I remember the guys telling me, "Damn, Fleming, you better start laughing at his jokes, in front of him, because that's." I tell him, I said, "You know what? I didn't get this far by kissing ass. My dad always told me, don't kiss ass." And I said, if I can't get somewhere or get bookings of my own talent, then I don't need him. I used to tell him that. And I think it got back to him. Because after I said that in Philadelphia one night to a wrestler, I'm not going to name. And I think he went backstage on me to Dusty. And after that match in Philadelphia, my bookings got less and less and less. And I think it's because I said that. And I told Lou then, Lou said, you know what, you'll be the son of a bitch anyway. Because he don't know wrestling from her. Lou did not care for him. He didn't respect him. I mean, the guy didn't even look like an athlete. But, I mean, I hate to talk derogatory about somebody, but he was just, maybe a lot of guys liked him. I didn't care for him. And obviously he didn't care for me because I wasn't what he was looking for. I wasn't this type of performer, I guess you could say. I hate to use that word performer in our business like these other guys use all the time. I don't care if it's kayfabe or that's over with or not. It's still, I still say wrestler, and wrestling, we go out to wrestle and all that. I don't use all that other stuff, but that's just the way it is. Did it hurt me? Sure. I'm sure it did. Because Gene Anderson used to tell me, he used to say, go to Florida. He kept on me about going to Florida, wrestle for, go down there and work for Eddie Graham, go to Florida. And I didn't want to go to Florida because I could see Vince was buying up everything and Crockett was still strong.
Yep.
And I said, if I get down to Florida, I'm gonna be left high and dry down there. And Jack Briscoe told me, I was pretty good friends with Jack Briscoe. He kind of buddied up to me too when I was a young kid. He kind of looked out for me. And he says, told Gene, he says, lay off the kid, man. He says, don't go to Florida. Because he knew what was coming. He had partnership in it,
Oh, yeah. Yep.
I didn't know that at the time. But now, years later, I learned that. But I didn't know he had partnerships with his grand down there. But anyway, I could tell you 100 stories about the way politics is in the business.
Oh, yeah.
It's in everything, I guess.
Yep. Oh, yeah. So as we hit the wind down here, head towards the finish, give us one last big push for the book where everybody can find, everybody can see, and everybody can learn even more about Mark Fleming.
Well, you could email me at fheadlock@cox.net. You could message me through my Facebook page. That's where most people reach me. On Facebook, Mark Fleming. And or you could go to Crowbar Press, which is Scott Steele Publishing company. He sells all kinds of wrestling books, and they're all great books. I've read some of them, and he's got a whole slew of all the big stars of their books, and it's sold there. And you can also get it on if you want. what is it called when you not have the book, but it's on your computer?
The Kindle, if you will.
Kindle. The Kindle is on Amazon, but I will tell people that Kindle doesn't have the pictures. I've got a whole section here. It's just a pictures, a photo gallery of different guys I've wrestled and all that, and you don't get all that on the Kindle version, just the literature. So I do tell people about that, but that's on Amazon if you want to go the Kindle route or whatever it's called. But
Yep.
You know, it's either through me, I autograph them and sign them and send them to the people, or you can get it through Scott Teal at Crowbar Press. Like I say, we've done pretty good with it, and I get a lot of good reviews from it, and a lot of the MMA category people have bought it and like it too. The way that I get pro wrestling across, you know, it's
yes, 100%.
See what I'm saying? I talk about it. It says it here on the back that me and Lou Thesz, we treated it like a sport, and it should be not like a burlesque. And so I've got a lot of guys that are in the MMA world that enjoyed it and got a new, different perspective on pro wrestling and what you got to go through to become a pro wrestler and what the life is like. You know, a lot of people don't understand that. They think it's all lights and glitter and big money, you know. It's not all like that. It wasn't when I was coming up. It might be easier now. I don't know, but you know, you had to pay your dues. It was a tough camaraderie, I'm telling you. And you know, the guys would back then, and that wasn't that long ago, but there was enough old timers around that would still try you and keep you in line behind the scenes and in the ring too. And people, a lot of people, fans and all, they just don't realize what you go through, and especially being somebody that didn't have a name before, like in a former Olympian or a former professional football player that was a star, like Ernie Ladd that turned to wrestling. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
Somebody that came in as a nobody that started at the dirt bottom and had to fight their way up. And that's just how I did it. And I think people see it as in a different light. The way I tell them, that's what I'm getting the feedback from. And they'll ask me questions. I say, yeah, that's the way I came up, the hard way. I was given nothing. Even through Lou Thesz, I mean, yeah, he showed me a lot and taught me a lot, but he didn't give me anything. I had to prove to him, and I had to show him that I was worthy and good enough, because like I've said, and guys have asked me about his personality, he was not the type of guy that would sugarcoat anything. He was not the type of guy that's going to waste his time on somebody that didn't work hard and didn't have a lot of heart. You know, he didn't care how big you were. He didn't care what you looked like. He didn't like steroids, all them guys. But if you could wrestle and you showed him you could wrestle, you don't have to be an Olympic guy. He wasn't in the Olympics. You know, and you don't have to be a NCAA 5-time champion or nothing like that. But if you could wrestle and you had a lot of heart and you worked hard every day, you know, he respected you. And you know, a lot of people don't know that. They just think it's bleach your hair blonde and go out and buy these wrestling gear and all that and be a wrestler, take steroids. And it wasn't like that when I was involved, and that's not the way I came up. It was tough. And I'm not just saying that, but it was times that I just didn't think I couldn't hack it anymore. But I wanted it so bad, and I think he read that. And I got it the hard way. Nothing was given to me. No, I didn't have no breaks and nothing. And, it just irks me that some of these guys that get these breaks that don't respect the business for what it should be seen as, and has turned it into a daggone circus and a joke. Everybody says, do you watch it now? I don't know who's out there. I don't know none of the guys today. Nope. I'll go to these independent shows, sign autographs, and go to these sport car shows and sign autographs and talk about my era. They ask me all about these guys today. I don't know who they're talking about. I don't like the business today. It's a three-ring circus. It really is. And are they making big money? Yeah. But to me, it was pride, and it might sound stupid, but money wasn't everything to me. It was just trying to represent the sport the way it should be represented, or the way it was represented years ago. Lou used to tell me, he said, Mark, you were born about 50, 60 years too late. He said, because
right, yeah.
He said Tom Pax was a promoter that kind of got him started in St. Louis. I don't know if you ever heard that name. Tom Pax. He was the big promoter out of St. Louis back then. He says, Lou told me, he says, Tom Pax would have loved you, because he was back in the 30s and 20s and all. But, I just, I don't know. I might sound crazy, but the money, yeah, I like to have the money and all. I didn't make much money in the business. I made more in Japan than I ever did here in the United States. But it was a sport to me, and I treated it like a sport. Is that crazy?
Absolutely. No, it's great. I love that. A lot of guys, would respect that and love that.
Yeah, I just I wish I'd have met him, but I never did. It was and I liked the way he represented himself in the business, and that was Bruno Sammartino. And I can understand where he's coming from. He treated it like a sport, which it should be. And I think in the long run, if it would have been ran that way and kept that way, and we have no it's not a closed camaraderie now, which it was. It seems like nowadays anybody can be one of the boys. Well, it didn't. I don't want to sound like I'm 100 years old, but no longer when I came up. To be in that camaraderie, you had to prove yourself, and in more ways than one. And it's just not there no more. I can see it. There's no kayfabe, and I blame Vince McMahon for all that crap. Never had no respect for him either. But Lou asked me one time, because there was a guy named Pat Patterson. You ever heard of that name?
Oh, of course, yeah.
Pat Patterson was big in WWF at this time when I was training with Lou. He called Lou. Actually, referee Earl Hebner.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I used to travel with him a lot when he was working for Crockett. Him and I would travel together a lot. And before he went to WWF, he got some of my publicity pictures and took them with him to give to Pat Patterson. And I didn't know no different. I just wanted to wrestle. But anyway, once I got working out with Lou, I guess the word got around, and Pat Patterson called Lou one day and says, "Hey, you got this kid out here that you're training, blah, blah, blah." He says, "Would you like to send him up here, and we could book him and all this?" And so Lou come up to me one night and says, "Hey, would you want to go to WWF?" This is when Hulk Hogan was the thing, man. And I said, Lou, this might sound stupid. I said, but first thing, I don't take steroids. I mean, I was a pretty good sized guy, but I was natural. I said, I don't take steroids. I'm not interested in that product they're doing. I says, if you would go with me and we would do the management thing where you're the manager and I'm the wrestler, I said, and use your belt and that we could do something. I said, but I don't think that would go over there. And I says, and me personally, I don't think I would go over up there. I says, I'm not interested. And he was like, I get you. He said, I get you. He said, all right. So that was the end of that. I don't know if he just told Pat Patterson and I didn't let it go or whatever, but I could have gone. And what would have been my role? I don't know. What would have happened? I don't know. But I never gave it a second thought because I didn't like what they were doing. I didn't want no parts of it. And I sure as heck wanted to take steroids. I had an attitude as if I can't get my size and get in shape on my own and doing my own thing, I don't want no substance to help me, then I don't need it. And Lou got it. He understood me. And he says, yeah, he said, you know what, you're right, because probably with the attitudes that we got, probably wouldn't mix in very well. But who knows, I think I'm right. I think I'm right on that. I never gave it really a second thought about going up there after that. I never said to myself, oh, there you go, I made a mistake. Nah,
right.
Because it wasn't. When I went to Japan, Japan was rough because the guys would try you. We would have to go to work out in the dojo every day, and the sports pages over there would put it in the sports page, magazines. It was treated like it was published just like it's supposed to be here, like it used to be. And I loved it over there. And they paid well. But I didn't never give WWF a second thought. I know a lot of guys that I worked out with and wrestled with, and Crockett went over there and they ended up being squash guys on TV and all, and I wasn't going to do that. I paid my dues. I told Lou, I said, you know what? I feel like I paid my dues. I was ready to spread my wings and show people what I could do with my talent. And I wasn't going to bow down to and do a hokey. Because I used the example of Dory Funk went there and they made him some kind of cowboy, goofy thing. And I said, now look, all this NWA champions that went there, they made them clowns, And, and that upset me. And I says, I don't like that. It didn't interest me one bit. And Lou didn't. He knew. He knew how strongly I felt about it. And he felt the same way. He was just going to let me make up my mind myself because the opportunity was there. It was offered to Lou for me. He said the opportunity was there. But he supported me when I said no. Because I'm sure he would have gotten a booking fee from me. He would have made some money. But he made money from me from going booking me in Japan and all that, which is great. But he should have. But wasn't interested in WWF. Not at all. Still not. Didn't regret it at all. It's just the way I am.
I love it. No regrets. But Mark, I appreciate all the time today. Thank you so much. Everybody should head over to Crowbar Press, check out It's Wrestling, Not Wrestling, the great book, and learn even more about your legendary career and the run with like you said, with Lou Thesz. So appreciate all the time today, Mark. Thank you so much.
I appreciate you giving me the time. I love talking about wrestling.
Love it. Thank you, though. Appreciate it.